In January 2011, D'monte was charged with first-degree murder of Kevin Leclair and the conspiracy to murder the Bacon Brothers and Red Scorpions. He fled Canada and has led investigators on an international manhunt.
In today's video, we'll be taking a look at Conor D'monte, the alleged leader of the United Nations gang from British Columbia, Canada. The United Nations gang has been active since 1997, with operations in the United States as well. At one point, the UN was the biggest smuggler of marijuana into the US. We're going to take a look at the history of the gang, Conor's involvement in leadership, his life on the run, and other related details. Let's get into it. In 1997, the United Nations was formed by Clay Roueche in Vancouver, British Columbia. Right out of high school, Roueche fell into illegal gambling shacks, partying it up with the Triads, an Asian organized crime syndicate. Roueche had known guys from high school who were growing pot and figured there were huge profits to be made if he could trade it on a bigger scale. By the late 90s, Roueche had Vietnamese and Laotian gangsters operating stash houses and white kids that were fresh out of juvie handling dildo blinds in Vancouver. One night, at a party in Richmond, one of his friends looked at his growing crew and said, "What the fuck is this, a United Nations meeting?" It stuck with Roueche, and the name of the gang was born and an official logo was created. After that, it was imprinted on t-shirts, on cocaine bricks, and even on tombstones. Unlike most gangs, the United Nations didn't have a rigid hierarchical structure. Roueche claimed that he didn't see the gang members as his inferiors and thought of them as partners, and at the end of the century, their business was booming. Roueche said he wanted to be the biggest drug lord in Canada and he wanted to make history. Within the next 5 years, he had landed on the radar of federal agents in the United States. Peter, an ICE agent who was an expert on how people smuggled weed into the States, had never seen anybody who operated with the audacity of Roueche. He was flying massive loads across the border in helicopters. In the early 2000s, the UN was considered the largest smuggler of weed into the United States. At its peak, the gang had around 200 members, most of which often had tattoos of tigers, dragons, and Chinese characters. It had members of various ethnicities, Canadians of European, East Asian, First Nations, and Iranian backgrounds. All seemed well, but it wasn't. With time, the police kept getting closer, and eventually, they came down hard on them. Many core members were arrested from 2005 to 2008. However, this wasn't even the worst of it. The biggest threat to the UN came from the Bacon Brothers, a gang that was inadvertently formed because of Roueche himself. Roueche was the inspiration behind this new generation of drug dealers. First, they even worked as associates of the UN, but then suddenly switched allegiances to a rival gang called the Red Scorpions. And worried about leaks in his organization, Roueche tightened his grip. He started to punish members who didn't do as he said, but things kept getting tougher for him, and on a flight to Mexico City in 2008, he was arrested. He faced charges of cocaine possession, conspiring to export cocaine, conspiring to export marijuana, and conspiring to launder money, and he was deported to the United States. There, he faced up to 220 years of jail, but was sentenced to 30 years with $8 million in fines. As of right now, Roueche is serving the sentence at a federal prison in Lee, Florida. After Roueche was arrested, Conor D'monte became the leader of the United Nations. Conor was born on January 8, 1978, and was raised on the west side of Vancouver. He had been part of the UN for a long time and was an original member. His brother, Syrian, was also a member of the UN. D'monte used aliases Brian Black, Manuel Nico Ortega, and Leonard Gordon Douglas. He had tattoos of 2 Chinese characters on his right shoulder, a Kunrak tattoo on his left shoulder, and a tiger and a dragon on his upper back. The police suspected that Conor was responsible for the day-to-day operations of the gang. He was found guilty of possession with the purpose of trafficking in 2000, and had also been convicted of occupying a vehicle with a firearm in 2002. During his leadership, the once mighty UN was losing its hold. Jump forward to 2008, a highly public war was taking place between the Red Scorpions and the UN, and D'monte carried on with the gang's plan to hunt and kill the Bacon Brothers and Red Scorpions. But he was especially after a man named Kevin Leclair. As Leclair was once part of the UN, he knew members of the UN, and he was someone D'monte wanted dead. He was essentially known as a traitor within the gang because he changed teams and joined the Red Scorpions. He was seen as a threat to the UN, and at the time there was a bounty for his killing, and D'monte paid the gang's hitman, Corey, to hunt him down. Plus, both of them also planned a conspiracy to kill the Bacon Brothers. D'monte collected and distributed vital information about core members of the rival gangs, including pictures of the targets, the places they were visiting, and what cars they drove. He even organized scouting teams to find his targets. All communication was done on BlackBerry devices, equipped with encryption software and linked to a private and encrypted server to reduce the risk of police detection. And in May 2009, UN gang members shot and killed Jonathan Barber, a 24-year-old man who was just hired to install stereo gear in a Porsche Cayenne SUV. The vehicle belonged to Jamie Bacon, and the gangster had mistaken Barber for him. Then, in February 2009, Leclair was gunned down in Langley's Thunderbird Mall parking lot. The shooters cleared the hit with D'monte as it was a Friday afternoon and the mall was filled with shoppers. He gave them the green light. Leclair was severely injured and died in the hospital 2 days later. The murder weapon, a high-powered gun, left 40 holes in his truck. The police suspected the UN was behind this killing. D'monte and Corey were charged with the first-degree murders of Leclair and was plotting to kill the Bacon brothers and their associates. Both were also placed on Interpol's most wanted list. After the shooting, Corey fled to Mexico. He remained in hiding until his extradition by the country's justice system 5 years later. He was found guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. During his trial, witness C, an unnamed member of the UN, told the court that Leclair was shot dead. He got an email from D'monte that said, "Traitor got it." He also said that Roueche was the glue that kept the group together. He brought everybody together to spend time and do business. After his arrest, the gang fell out. And after Leclair's murder, D'monte fled the country too. However, there is one other time that he's known to come back to Canada. During 2011, he snuck into Canada to sign over his $1.6 million house to his wife, Jennifer Kong. The Integrated Homicide Investigation Team was actively searching for him since charges against him were laid, and had even asked for assistance from international law enforcement agencies as they believed that he and Corey were no longer in Canada. But on April 1st, 2011, D'monte attended a meeting at a Metrotown law office to sign over his Burnaby house to his wife. His signature was on the property transfer document, and the lawyer who was present at the signing said he had no idea who D'monte was and he had never met him before that day. The police only found out about the signing after the Sun called them for comments. For years, law enforcement had no clue of D'monte's whereabouts. In 2019, the Combined Forces Special Enforcement Unit announced a $100,000 prize for any information that led to his arrest, but he was nowhere to be found, until early 2022. He was spotted and arrested in Puerto Rico in February. The police closed in on him as he drove through a popular tourist district of Isla Verde. Antonio Torres, the Chief Deputy U.S. Marshal for the District of Puerto Rico, stated that he did not resist arrest, but he acted surprised. He was alone at the time and had a 9mm gun with him. Conor D'monte had changed his name to Johnny Williams. Authorities don't know when he came to Puerto Rico or why he chose to hide out there, but they suspect that he had been using his new name for at least a few months. He settled into a rural eastern mountain community near a rainforest and lived in a house on a street that had no name in a working class neighborhood. And surprisingly, he actually had a reputation as a philanthropist in the area. Every month, he accompanied employees of a non-profit organization to a farmer's market in the nearby city of Carolina. He was known as Johnny Teeth by the locals as he had very white teeth. On the island, he was very well connected with the people. He frequently played beach tennis and ran campaigns for various causes and concerns. He had a beach tennis site, and he was always found organizing matches, barbecues, and parties. He posted photos of people playing tennis as well, but never of himself. D'monte organized Christmas toy drives for children in need, started the renovations for an elementary school, and even worked with a bee preservation charity, Karma Honey Project. His charity work was even celebrated by the governor of the country, Pedro. During Puerto Rican Beekeeper Week, Pedro highlighted the importance of bees in the ecosystem and appreciated the work of all professionals who were working towards preserving bees. After the UN leader was captured, the governor said that he had never met him personally, but his charity's cause was beautiful. At the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, D'monte even donated masks and face shields at the Santa Isabella Medical Center. He urged the public to message him if any nurses or doctors needed mask donations. It wasn't revealed how his cover was finally blown, but the police were chasing down tips of sightings all across the world. It came as a shock to the entire community. Antonio Torres said it was like a Netflix story. A local businessman who didn't want to be named stated that D'monte fooled everybody. He met the UN leader in the early days of the pandemic and described him as a tremendous salesman. Another unnamed woman who sold next to his stalls at the farmers market said that this came as a shock to everybody around the area and nobody knew anything. Most people said that D'monte never made any efforts to hide. Pedro stated, "From what I see, this person scammed half the world, deceived half the world, changed, physically operated so that they would not detect him. Now, the authorities will prosecute him and make him answer for the crimes he committed in Canada." As of right now, he faces murder and conspiracy charges, but he's also said to be a part of a number of attacks directed at people in the Justice Institute after he fled Canada. The unnamed witness at Corey's trial testified that he had asked another associate to firebomb and shoot houses that were on a list given by D'monte. These were said to be the houses of people that had ripped off the gang. However, he later found out from the news that it was homes of Justice Institute employees or police officers, and D'monte had misled the witness. He's currently behind bars at a detention center in San Juan and awaits extradition. Several witnesses, including former gang members, are expected to testify against D'monte. As of today, the United Nations is still active in British Columbia, although, according to authorities, not nearly as powerful as they once were. Most of the original members are reportedly either dead, in prison, or in hiding. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video and want to see more like this in the future. Also leave a comment down below letting me know what you'd like to see next. Thanks for watching and have a good one.